big face was inside.
Hey, still on competition.
Oh shit, this will be in the video.
Wait, I want to pass.
Alright, we're going to start a new chapter. If you want to have an outlook of what we're going to do for the rest of the term, you can check the document that is in our chat group. In our chat group, you can hit term 3 schedule. Then you can see what's going to happen. For example, today, 402, we're going to start out with an overview of reproduction. I usually provide the page number that you can read out first beforehand, right, so that you know if you want to read out beforehand. Okay. Today I will assign an RE at the end of it. Just one side, 3 questions. Okay, just for today's lesson. Overview of reproduction. There's an SLS on flower parts that's already been assigned. I believe you've learned this in primary school. For those who study in Singapore, do you study flower parts in Malaysia? No. China? Yeah. It seems that is new for you. We'll recap a bit when we come back. Okay? So, what we're going to do on the SLS is on flower parts, different parts of a flower, and then you do a little bit of recap on pollination. Okay? But I'll kick off the RE first. Anyone keeping for the competition colors? All of them. So therefore I give you 5 more. Okay, the deadlines will be on the Google Doc. I've also put the deadlines into Google Classroom so that, I don't know, do they give you reminders, right? They do. Okay, then it will appear as a reminder. Where am I missing out? Oh, okay. Thank you. Alright, today's lesson is going to be very chill, just an introduction. Alright? A lot of the things that I'm going to talk about today, let's just appreciate it a little. Alright? Okay, we come to a new chapter on reproduction. Yeah. Okay, there is a practical for this particular chapter on plants. Okay, plant reproduction. Okay, plant reproduction. What we're going to do for plant reproduction, want to make a guess? Oh no, you will be pollinating things. You'll be dissecting something. Okay? Okay, so for plant reproduction, there will be one practical, we're going to dissect something. Right? As much as possible, if I can, I'll bring specimens so that we can view them up close. Okay? For plants. A lot of the parts, there will be several SLS to be assigned. But whenever SLS is assigned, it will tend to be for things that you sort of covered before. So for example, a lot of you have studied flower parts, pollination, right? So SLS on that, refresh your memory, and then a little bit of add-on. So for human reproduction, I will actually not go through the parts in class. Okay? It will be assigned by SLS. We've covered the parts in JH2 before. In J now, you recap it. My role is to tease out the new things. Right? The new parts? No, there are no new parts. The new things, right? The new aspects that you have not considered before, and then I will drive home the parts that we have to understand a little bit more. Okay? Okay, so that's an overview of where we're going to go. But today, we're just going to have an introduction into the wacky world of reproduction. Reproduction, as you know it, I don't know what you know. Okay, so perhaps let's talk about it now. laugh like that. Okay, so there are two kinds of reproduction, very broadly speaking. First being, I'll just draw some words. Sexual, yes. So there's sexual reproduction. Yes, asexual reproduction. What? Yes, this is it. Does it matter?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Okay, so sexual asexual reproduction. What do you know about sexual asexual reproduction? Are these terms new? Have you heard these terms before? Okay, so let's tease them out. What do you already know about sexual and asexual reproduction? I believe that you've covered some of these terms in primary school before. What do you know about sexual and asexual reproduction? Let's spend a few minutes, talk to your female partner, right? About what you know about these two things. What's the difference? Are there similarities? Okay, wrap up your conversation. Right. Okay. Let's talk about what you already know. Okay. Sexual versus asexual reproduction. What do you know or what do you think you know? Okay. Rachel? What do you discuss with your friends? Okay, let's listen to Rachel. Yes, Rachel? So everything is? Oh, okay. Asexual reproduction, you're saying that both male and female part or one person or one individual? Is that what you want to lock in? Asexual reproduction? Male plus female reproductive organs of the same individual.
One will be deactivated.
Deactivated? How will I switch that? Oh, in some organisms, they have both male and female parts, both are functioning. They can actually, there are flatworms that can they literally just flip upon themselves and poke themselves. Okay? Yeah. Sorry, so what do you want to... Yes, Cynthia? Oh, okay. Asexual reproduction, only one parent involved. And then it just duplicates itself. Then sexual? Two. One male, one female. Okay, any other differences? Yes, dear?
Sexual is the daughter, the gametes, right?
Yeah, the gametes.
It's half of the parent, the symbol.
So what?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
That is sexual.
Diploid. What is diploid?
We still half.
Okay, we think about this, we see where this goes later on. Okay, see where this goes later on. You realize in biology, what I teach you in class is just a general idea, but there are tons of exceptions. Okay, anything else? Fertilization, yeah? Okay, sexual involves fertilization. Asexual does not involve. Is that true? Okay, we see the examples that are coming up. Yes.
You know, like unicellular bacteria, right?
Okay, unicellular bacteria.
They reproduce. Is it considered asexual?
Okay, is that considered asexual reproduction? A single bacterium then split into two bacteria. Is that considered asexual reproduction? Actually, there is. There is a form of asexual reproduction. It is the same individual, but it just splits into two. It's actually a form of asexual reproduction. Because the individual itself is that one cell. Yeah. We are individual, we are multicellular organisms. This is a unicellular. Any other differences that you know of, sexual and asexual? That's not been brought up by your friends so far. Okay, which one meiosis, which one mitosis? This one involves meiosis. At which stage? First stage? One male, one female. Where does meiosis actually come in?
Not the recombination.
Sorry, Chanju?
The recombination already, like,
Oh, okay, recombination, yes, there's some crossing over and whatnot. Yeah. That's not meiosis in itself, right? Okay. So my question is, when does meiosis take place in the context of sexual reproduction?
Isn't it all the time?
Forming the gametes, yeah.
Isn't it all the time?
All the time. Like,
Gametes are always
okay, gametes are always being formed. Okay, so depends on when you want to, at which point of sexual reproduction you're talking about. So meiosis is only involved in the formation of the gametes, which are used in sexual reproduction. Yeah? But you know, after fertilization occurs and the baby develops, that's not meiosis anymore. Okay? So if you want to use the word meiosis, understand at which stage actually is involved in. It's only at the very beginning to produce the gametes. But is this always true? Okay? Asexual mitosis. When one individual becomes another, usually it's a division by mitosis, many cells. Okay, let's say you can undergo asexual reproduction. Just pop one more version of you, right? You would require all your cells to undergo mitosis to create an exact copy of you. Okay, any other differences? Anyway, that's human blood. Yeah. Okay, so the differences you can see on page 17 of the textbook. Compare and contrast sexual and asexual reproduction. Okay, this table is provided to you. I think we covered some of the points. First one, only one parent is involved. Sexual, you will require two parents. One of the male and one of the female gender. Next one, typically involves mitosis, but not meiosis. You see the word typical. Okay, typically. Well, why is this so? Okay, we will see some examples in a while. Typically does not involve the production of haploid gametes, whereas sexual reproduction needs to produce haploid gametes. Okay, you see the word typical. Typically, that's because at the end of the day, this is a generalization. There are some exceptions to it. And I'll share with you some. I have some specimens to share also. Number 4, offsprings are genetically identical to the parent. Kind of makes sense if you are going to use the process of mitosis. Right? The cells deployed exactly the same. No crossing over took place, no recombination of alleles, no independent assortment. The offspring should be exactly the same. Whereas for sexual reproduction, it's like a shuffle of parts. Truly, if I need to use an analogy, sexual reproduction is just two individuals coming together, they have a deck of cards, they shuffle it, and then they decide to put down one stack, put down half a stack, and then they combine, and then a new individual goes up. right? That's really what we're doing. We are just shuffling our cards, passing it on to the next generation. But the cards need to be of the same type. What do I mean by that? We are all poker cards. The dog that runs down the street, right, every does Uno cards. So you cannot just anyhow just shuffle 2 decks of cards and then you put the 2 decks of cards together. We need to be of the same species. Yeah? But my deck of poker cards may be very different from another person's deck of poker cards. In that, mine may be limited edition, all Pokemon, right? All the designs Pokemon. Then another deck of poker cards, the design is all the classic one. You can see all the king, queen, and all that. But it's all poker cards. We're all the same species, but we're slightly different in our alleles. And that's why we all look different. Yes?
What about hybrids?
For example?
What's that called?
Mu. Okay. Okay, so you may have heard of some animals like, okay, let's Google it. Liger, right? Okay, you can see it's liger. Okay, there you go. By the way, I was looking up, potato. Guess what? Potatoes actually have fruits, if you let them grow up fully. And the fruit looks exactly like a tomato. So if you go into the wild, you see a tomato looking plant, don't anyhow pluck and put in your mouth. Because potato fruits look exactly like tomato fruit and it's highly poisonous. Okay? Yeah. You look at it, you can tell the difference. It just looks like a raw tomato to me. Yeah. Okay, so what are we looking for? A liger, right? Liger. Tiger, lion. Mated together. Right? So how is this possible? It is possible because their ancestors are quite similar. So in that sense, right, they have similar enough genes to be able to still mate with each other. This is when you can have, in a sense, a hybrid between 2 species. If our counterpart species of the human race is still roaming about, it could happen. We used to have 3 species of humans a long time ago. So we are the Homo sapiens, then were the Homo neanderthalis, and then the Homo, I forgot the name of the last one. We could very well have genes, alleles of the Homo neanderthals running through us. I'm not very sure, right? That's if we ever met each other a long time ago. Yeah? So there were different species of humans a long time ago also. Why did we get here? Hey, your question is raised up. Today's just intro, just to get to know, understand the topic. Yeah? Yeah, what? Lizen? Yes, Lizen? Okay. Asexual reproduction, you tend to get a very large number of organisms. For example, the bacterium. Right? This one time asexual reproduction you get 2, another round you get 4, another round you get 8. Right? Then so on and so forth. It tends to be very fast and rapid, which is the second point. Sexual reproduction, you need to find a mate first. Then you can carry out the process. Does not occur in higher life forms, asexual reproduction. Okay, this is what you see later on as we go through the examples. It depends on what you define as a higher life form. Right? I like to think that octopus is incredibly smart. Right? I truly think so. If you see the things that they can achieve, they are quite smart, they can solve a lot of puzzles. So I think this one, higher life form, you need to think of what higher really means. I don't think there's one higher than the other. Usually associated with colonization and a static environment, asexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction tends to be associated with a changing environment. You tend to find that if the environment is rather fixed, there is no change in climate, asexual reproduction may occur more because there's no need to have diversity. Whereas in an environment where tons of different diseases may combine, it benefits us to all be genetically a little bit different because maybe you have this particular enzyme that I don't have. That may help you survive this particular pandemic. Another pandemic comes, I have this enzyme that you don't have. I may survive this pandemic. Let's ensure as a species we at least have few individuals surviving here and there. This comparison between asexual and sexual reproduction, a possible essay that you could revise if you want to write an essay under this topic, okay, or the introduction. Today, however, I would just like to give you a spread of the different kinds of asexual reproduction that can take place. Sexual reproduction is the core of the chapter, where we will really dive down into mechanics. But for asexual reproduction, it's touch and go. I'd just like you to appreciate the diversity of different things, processes that can take place. Yes?
On page 17 in our textbook, right?
Yes.
For sexual reproduction, it says involves one or two parents. But then, so is that true? Because I'm a boy,
Okay, involves one or two parents. Good point. So I give an example. Let's say you have a plant. And then you have a flower. Today my drawing is there. Okay, so the flower often has male and female parts. When it self-fertilizes, right, that's still sexual reproduction because it involves the fusion of two haploid gametes. Yeah? Okay, so sexual reproduction involves the fusion of two haploid gametes, and then after that it goes on to reproduce an individual. So in this sense, this is still sexual reproduction, but it is self-fertilization. Okay. Today I'll just like to give you a flavor of the different kinds of asexual reproduction that can take place. Do not need to go and memorize what exactly each one is. Just appreciate that there is diversity. The key idea is that when we talk about asexual reproduction, we tend to produce offspring that are genetically identical, and we tend to only require just one parent. Okay, I keep saying tend to because there are a lot of exceptions in biology. Right? I'll just give you a flavor. So today on page 14, you will see a 15, a spread of different kinds of asexual reproduction that can take place. We'll just watch a quick video to summarize all the different types. You don't need to memorize the definitions or whatnot. I think the most I could ask you is maybe I'll give you MCQ. Then I'll give you a combination of these different types. Then I'll ask you which one is asexual. And then just pick and choose one. I don't think I will be asking you how to define each one. So just appreciate and the value that there is diversity even in one process of asexual reproduction. We're going to watch a quick video and then we're going to start looking at various examples.
Asexual reproduction. By the end of this topic, you will be able to describe different types of asexual reproduction, describe vegetative propagation and its types, describe different methods of artificial propagation. Asexual reproduction is a form of reproduction that involves the production of a new organism by a single parent. Fission refers to the division of parent cells into two parts. This is the simplest type of reproduction and is seen in single-celled organisms such as amoeba and paramecium. In amoeba, the nucleus first divides into two equal parts. This is followed by the division of the cytoplasm. Thus, the two daughter amoeba formed grows and attain full size and then split again. In some organisms, such as Spirogyra and flatworm, the organism breaks up into two or more fragments after maturation. These fragments grow into new individuals. In budding, one or more new organisms grow in the form of a bulb-like projection called bud. It grows and then may eventually break away from the parent. If you view a solution of warm water, sugar, and yeast powder under the microscope, you will observe in yeast that a little cytoplasm accumulates at one end of the cell and the bud is formed. The nucleus divides into two and one of them enters the bud. In yeast, the buds form rapidly and create a chain of yeast cells if there is enough supply of nutrition. In Hydra, bud appears on the body wall, which grows into a full hydra in a day or two and separates from the parent. A spore is a tiny, spherical, unicellular body covered with a thick wall. It grows into a new plant when conditions are favorable. Bread mold that can often be seen growing on moist, stale bread grows when spores settle on the bread. In the regeneration mode of reproduction, an entire new organism can grow from some pieces or cells of the parent organism. A flatworm can be cut into many pieces, and each piece will grow into a complete new flatworm. Vegetative reproduction refers to the production of new plants from parts of the mother plant, such as roots, stems, or leaves, without help of any reproductive organ. Potato. There are several buds present on the surface of a potato called eye. A piece of potato with at least one eye on its surface is planted in the soil to develop a new plant. Ginger. In ginger, new plants are produced by some parts of underground stems. Onion. In onion, new plants are produced from the bulb, which is an underground stem with thick leaves. Strawberry. In plants like strawberry, the shoots with the buds bend towards moist land and grows into a new plant. Bryophyllum. The plant of Bryophyllum reproduces with the help of its leaves. A Bryophyllum leaf contains various buds on its margin.
Right. So it's just a spread of the different kinds of asexual reproduction that can take place. Very broadly speaking, they involve one parent. The offspring tend to be their offspring are genetically identical, unless of course mutation occurs along the way. Okay. I'm just going to briefly run through the different types of asexual reproduction, just for you to appreciate the different types. I find it very fascinating. Maybe out of the 5 different methods, right? If you could go through asexual reproduction, which method would you want to go through? 2. What's 2? Fragmentation. You know what that is, no?
The one that I cut up, then my hand like.
Correct. So you're saying you want to like talk and then leave the hand there, and then want the final ground over there. Yeah. Yeah? Sessile fragmentation. Hey, somebody was very sure about something. Which method would you want to go through? You can go through asexual reproduction. What? You plant yourself in the soil. You want to do vegetative propagation, is it? Vegetative propagation, Shanae from the next class say, oh, how about I cut my hair, right, then I plant it in the soil. Then a few months later, right, you pull out that ponytail, right, another Shanae comes out. Yeah? Vegetative propagation. I have a potato here with a lot of eyes that have been starting to sprout. If you take any of these eyes, okay, individual eyes, and if I put it into the soil there, can eventually become a potato. And it will be genetically identical. Yeah? So we could do that. We have tons of work. We have a crop farm out there. Yeah? So that's one mode of asexual reproduction. Anyone wants to undergo budding? Budding will be the creepiest, I find. Imagine like a lady comes to class, right, and look pregnant, right, then lift off the shirt there and have face. So that would be what budding looks like. Budding, all the individual starts to form at the side, fully formed, and then you cap off. Yeah? Okay, so some of the examples. Let's talk about fission first. Fission, right, I found a little bit quite interesting. Fission. Fission you saw took place in the bacteria. But then, if you think about it, right, it looks kind of like mitosis, right? They kind of just divide into genetically identical, right? So then, what's the difference between mitosis and fission? There are differences. Namely one, bacteria, for example, doesn't even come with a nucleus. Yeah? So the process of its division is different. Although the outcome is the same, the process is different. So we give it a different name, fission. It is not mitosis, but the outcome is the same. We do produce two genetically identical cells. Right? Fission also takes place as a form of reproduction for unicellular organisms. Mitosis produces genetically identical cells, but if you think about it, if we hurt ourselves, mitosis occurs to repair that part. That's not reproduction. Mitosis is not equals to reproduction. It's definitely one part of it. Okay? So fission tends to apply to unicellular organisms. And it is quite a different process from mitosis, even though the outcome is the same. Here, it's a single bacteria, two bacteria undergoing fission. It is very, very rapid. Individuals become an entire bacterial colony 2 hours. That's 1 hour, 20 minutes. Every 20 minutes, you can divide, undergo fission 1 time. So you just do the math. How many bacteria will you get at the end of 2 hours? Okay, this is fission taking place. Okay, so fission is asexual reproduction on a unicellular level. I find fragmentation the most interesting. Look at fragmentation. Yeah, go straight to the example. Okay, these two fellas can undergo fragmentation. I'll show you a real life example. This one is of flatworm, right? Okay, let's watch the example of flatworm. Okay, this flatworm can undergo asexual reproduction in the way that I said, just chop out one part.
Thanks to CuriosityStream for supporting PBS Digital Studios.
This goofy little guy is called a Planarian. Sure, it's just a flatworm at the bottom of a pond, but it has a very special superpower, one that scientists would love to harness. To show you, well, it's gonna get a little bit slasher movie here. Okay, don't worry. It's going to be okay. Seriously. I promise. It doesn't even hurt. That would be curtains for most organisms. I mean, this piece here is just a chunk with no head and no tail. But watch. You can see under a microscope that overnight its wound heals closed. Okay, maybe we could do that, more slowly of course. But then it starts to regenerate, growing new tissue. It's that white part, called the blastema. In a week, see those tiny little spots? They're new eyes grown from scratch. But the Planarian, can I call it that yet? It still kind of looks like a blob. By day 12, it's starting to look like a proper Planarian. It's got a head, an entirely new one, and a new tail. And it's doing its regular Planarian things, like pooping. That's because one of the first things it started regrowing was a tube called the pharynx, which is how things go in and out. It sucks out food, like this beef liver that scientists are feeding it. After 3 weeks, it looks totally normal. From that one Planarian, you get 4. Other animals, like this newt, can regrow a toe or a tail. but planarians are practically the only animal that can regrow a head. So why can't we do that? Well, it all comes down to powerful cells known as stem cells. They're the green dots here, and they make up 1/5 of a planarian's body. They can turn into different kinds of cells and make every new body part. We only have stem cells that act like these when we're embryos. Once we grow up, we pretty much lose this ability. Though doctors have been able to get us to grow back a fingertip. But what if we could grow ourselves anew? A whole arm or a liver? Scientists are trying to figure out exactly how planarians do it. And maybe one day, these humble flatworms can inspire new ways to heal our injuries. Hi, it's Lauren again. This kind of planarian is from San Francisco.
Right, so that was a flatworm. Recently, when I went to a forest, I also found a flatworm. So this was a flatworm I found. The flatworm looks quite different. Look at this flatworm. It has stripes. It's called a hammerhead flatworm. One interesting fact. Hammerhead, flatworms now they eat. They don't like take in the food specifically. They inject out the digestive enzymes, then digest on the outside, then they suck it in. It's like you going to the canteen, you onto your food, then digest finish, then you suck it back in. Right? So that's how it digests its food. Up close, it looks like this. This is called hammerhead flatworm because of its. You look at the head. That's quite cute. You know what it's doing? In the moment I was taking this, it was chasing a snail. So, chasing. It's the most epic chase you can imagine. So two slow beings, right, just chasing each other. But I researched, and in this particular hammerhead flatworm, what it does is that it preys on snail. So it will chase snail. Once it hijacks it, it will insert neurotoxins. Then after it will be paralyzed, then it will start to digest it, and then it will suck it in. Yeah. So it was just chasing this snail, I was just watching them follow each other. That's a form of asexual reproduction, fragmentation. And then there's sporulation. Sporulation you find in some plants, some fungi that can produce spores that once detached and land onto the soil, it can sprout out into another genetically identical individual. The details of it actually is super complicated. If you are very interested, you can go and read up. There are various kinds of sporulation. It exists in plants, fungi, but it's just a general idea. And one parent, genetically identical offspring. We also have budding, right? Budding earlier on you saw. It looks kind of like mitosis, but it's kind of like you prepare the house first, then you shift everything in after, right? Whereas for mitosis, we kind of make a copy of all the furniture inside the house, then after that we cut the house into two. Yeah? That's budding. Then there's vegetative propagation. The potato that's being passed around, being cut by things here right now, it's kind of the plant's way of, it's like plant fragmentation if you think about it. Take off a part of the plant with this eye, and then you go and toss it into the ground and just get another individual. Right? You can get tons of individuals from each eye. I'd like to share with you one form of reproduction, the very last one that I find most interesting. Because if you notice, all of these forms of reproduction take place with plants, unicellular organisms, fungi. But can asexual reproduction take place in multicellular organisms? It can. You find it taking place a lot in insects. Insects can carry out asexual reproduction. Some birds can do it, some reptiles can do it. For example, the Komodo dragon can carry out asexual reproduction.
As a major factor against the existence of most cryptid creatures. But a recent discovery could turn that argument upside down. Megalania's wild relatives, Komodo dragons, can multiply without a mate. Orthogenesis. It is the process of producing offspring without male fertilization, and it has surprised the experts.
There are a handful of reptiles out there that do reproduce parthenogenetically. It came as a big shock, I think, to most people that humans were capable of doing it.
Mike Nelson is the head zookeeper for Sedgwick County Zoo in Wichita, Kansas. The zoo's newest Komodo dragon was hatched parthenogenically.
He's a parthenogenic offspring, and he's produced without the genetic input of the father. That means the female lays eggs, which then develop normally without fertilization from the male.
And quite excited as a mate.
You think about that, if the egg is not fertilized and it develops, right, what are the implications of this individual on a genetic basis? Right? The egg develops into a full individual without it undergoing fertilization with the sperm. Genetically, what are the implications of this organism? Okay, it's identical to the parent. Anything else? Only one set of homologous chromosomes. If you think about it, right, when you produce gametes, you produce a haploid gamete. If this haploid gamete goes on to undergo mitosis for an entire individual, the entire individual is haploid. Yeah? But this is one method of parthenogenesis. You can produce individuals, they are haploid. So it doesn't quite follow all the things that you saw just now when you compare sexual and asexual reproduction. Is this fully genetically identical? Not exactly. There's kind of half the genes or alleles of the parent. Right? Yeah. So this is quite interesting. Parthenogenesis kind of throws us off. Haploid individuals. There's another form of parthenogenesis where to produce an egg, rather than go through meiosis, go through mitosis. So you produce an egg that starts off diploid. Then that individual can still develop into a diploid individual. So this is, to me, one interesting thing. So does this still fit under the category of asexual reproduction? One parent, genetically identical? Yeah, so this one kind of like depends, right? Depends on what mode of parthenogenesis. Not all modes, but a lot of modes result in just a haploid egg just developing into a full individual. So it's not quite genetically identical, but it's still one offspring if you think about it. And you still produce another individual just from one parent. Yes?
Then if you got the haploid, right? Then
Yeah.
how does the haploid organism reproduce?
Yeah, so right, then how does this haploid organism reproduce? Okay, so today I brought my ant colony. Okay, so that we can talk about it. My ant colony, my new ant colony is quite special. If you look at the ant colony's picture, okay, later on as I pass this around, you'll find it looks like two different species altogether. But actually, that one in the middle over here, this is a male ant. The surrounding ants are female ants. Okay? For insects, like ants, the females are diploid. All the males are haploid. So actually all the males will produce through parthenogenesis. No fertilization, they just develop into a male. So you think about it, sex in the insect world is quite different from bigger organisms, where all the traits is concentrated in these two chromosomes. For insects, it's spread across. I don't quite know the mechanism, but haploid individuals tend to be males, diploid tend to be females. But then, if you think about it carefully, it's kind of weird, right? And what will happen if this male produces a sperm? You think about it, right? How? I still want to produce a diploid offspring, right? If this male goes on to produce a sperm, what would the sperm look like, genetically speaking? It's a haploid individual. Okay, I'm going to pass this specimen around. Inside, you will see some males, you see some females. The brown thing in there are cocoons. Okay? Ants go through metamorphosis just like butterflies. They start off as a mini caterpillar, then they will go into cocoon, and then they will emerge as an ant. So they don't start off as an egg ant, emerge as a baby ant, and then go into bigger ant. Yeah? Yeah, all ants are like that. They don't hatch as baby ants, then emerge as big ants. Then grow into big ants. They start off as a little grub, like a caterpillar, then they go into cocoon. Then they become an ant. Okay, but I'd like you to think about how do we solve this problem, right? If males are haploid and it produces sperms, what will the sperms look like? What are the implications if I continue several generations down? Right? The males are haploid, but all the females are diploid. How? Here, I found some new specimens over the holidays, all contributed by people. First one, I'd like to show you a new queen I found. So this is a giant forest ant. Oh, this is an ant. Okay, this is an ant. It's a queen ant, a giant forest ant, found in Southeast Asia. This ant is called, I forgot the scientific name. It's called Dinomyrmex gigas. Sounds big already. This queen diploid in nature. You see, its back is quite big. Queens, right, are able to store sperms for its entire lifetime. So you just mate once, then you store the sperms. Somehow you can keep the sperms alive. Whenever it wants to produce new egg, then fertilize. Then a female worker will come out. I have a female diploid worker. So this is also an ant. Female diploid worker. Yeah, no, the queen is a female.